Appreciate everyone coming on. Today's Texas kind of coach to coaches session is going to be goalie basics, and we have Coach Alex Stankovic from St. Mark's and Pegasus Water Polo Academy in North Texas. Now, I know we have a lot of some very kind of new coaches. We also have some very experienced coaches. I want this to be a collaborative effort. I want this to be a sharing space. So if you have anything to add, a comment or whatever, please do. Just unmute yourself, ask in the chat feature. All is welcome here. And today, again, Coach Alex is going to be talking about goalie basics. Alex played and has won multiple European championships and played for the Serbian Montenegro national team for 5 years. He played at BYU Hawaii and then again at St. Francis. And then he kind of did the family work thing for a few years. And then he ended up in North Texas and decided, I'm going to go get in shape and go play some masters water polo. And then but I know Mihai and Peter and Spencer, they kind of dragged him, say, hey, why don't you come out and coach a little bit? So, and Alex, I appreciate you taking the time today to kind of share your thoughts on the goalie position. If you have any questions, guys, again, please just go ahead and unmute yourself or ask in the chat box. But I'm going to just kind of turn it over to Alex. Alex, it's all you.
Thanks, Joe, and thank you guys for having me. Looking forward to this thing ending and getting back in the pools. I would rather see you sweating next to the pool than in front of camera. So help me today. Help me help you if I could. Stop me anytime if you have any questions, suggestions. I know goalie stuff. I don't know as much when it comes to offense, defense, whatever. I had no choice. I was talking to Joe yesterday, and he asked me, how did you end up being a goalie? I had no choice. My older brother, my 3-year-old brother, took me to the pool one day, and he said, you see the end of that pool? That's where you belong. That's where the goalies were. So I've never played water polo as a player. I was always a goalie. And in saying that, so what has impacted my career overall as a goalie, as a water polo player, was obviously 50%. I have to say it's my brother. And then 50% would be the coaches that I work with. And I would have to say it's just one of those probably 15 coaches that I worked with was a goalie coach, or someone who was a goalie prior to becoming a goalie coach. So in saying that, we all have something that can contribute to developing some amazing goalies. I'm going to mention a couple of things and later elaborate on that. So fear of being hit in the head or bloody nose. It was just one coach, I remember, that he broke that for me. So another coach understood my size better than I did and helped me get off of my arms and just rely on my legs more. So, and again, in saying that, a good goalie coach does not have to be a goalie. It does not have to be a good goalie coach. It's just we all can contribute to someone becoming amazing what they do. In saying that, I'm going to cover a couple of things. One is how to select a good goalie, some coaching mistakes, then how to some ideas of how to become a better goalie coach, what the practice should look like, at least a portion of it, goalie size and how much it actually matters in water polo, or if it matters at all. Boys versus girls, and then some easy fixes, something that you guys can do. I don't want to say starting tomorrow, but as soon as we get back in the pools, something that you can do to some easy fixes, some easy tweaks that you can do that I would guarantee you it will help your goalies. I'm sure most of you are already doing it. If not, hopefully it helps you. And again, I'm just going to go over a couple of things. Stop me if you have any questions. So number one would be how to select a goalie. Well, maybe how not to select a goalie. So if don't choose the worst player on the team. Don't choose the worst swimmer. Don't choose someone the kid with ADD or someone with antisocial disorder. choose someone who's smart. And when I say smart, it doesn't have to be the hardest working kid in the pool. It doesn't have to be someone a straight A student. When I say smart, someone who understands. If you see a little street smart kid who just is not into swimming and hates losing, maybe there will be a good choice for a goalie. In saying that, when I say smart, it's important to understand angles in water polo. If you're a goalie and you understand the size of the cage and you understand speed of the ball and you understand how early you need to catch that ball or where to stand, that's the smart part that I'm talking about. The second, when we talk about smart, again, it's someone who doesn't like losing and does not want to see that ball behind their back. And then more importantly, someone who's going to outsmart the players. A lot of times, and you will see that in the World Cups and Olympic Games, goalies try to get inside the players' heads. What that means is that they most likely know where the player is going to shoot 90% of the time by either remembering their shots or writing down those shots or just talking to other players who play with them in other clubs. In saying that, if you have a kid who is simply sitting in the middle of the cage just waiting for those shots, that kid could do so much better if you're able to make them believe that they can outsmart every single shot. In saying that, I always use the phrase "make them shoot where you want them to shoot" when I coach my goalies, and I've seen an instant improvement in the ability to work less and have better results. In saying that, I'm going to get to the next page. If you have, I mentioned earlier, if you have someone who is not into swimming or lazy, and I said there's potential for a good goalie there. Goalies are by nature very responsible, but very lazy. In saying that, what lazy means that if I don't like swimming, maybe I'll enjoy being on the cage. But also, if I'm able to make saves without putting minimum effort in it, I will do that. Another thing that is important is that if you're expecting your goalies to perform during practice on their own, and if you believe that they will deliver on 100% of your asks or your tasks, they will not. And I can guarantee, I work with some of the best goalies in the world. I think I've watched practices of some of the best goalies in the world, and I can tell you that they all take shortcuts. So if you tell goalies to swim 10 times 100 butterfly, they'll do 8. If you tell them to have their arms up with dry elbows for an hour, they will blow into their elbows to dry them so they don't get caught. And again, it's just something that I've witnessed, and I can say that I'm very much the same. I'm lazy. I like taking shortcuts, and I like outsmarting players. Moving on to Eggbeater, right? So if you have a kid who you think is going to be a good goalie, but that kid just a year later cannot hold the arms up after 10 minutes, which means it doesn't have really good Eggbeater, and you're unable to fix that, that kid is not going to be a good goalie. That's one of those things that it is a requirement for good goalies, strong legs. And when I say strong legs, I'm going to use Eggbeater as an example. We have, and Mihai, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to use one of the goalies from St. Mark's. I'm not going to name him, but I've been working with him for 2 years straight, and he just does not have legs. He is the hardest working guy in the pool, but he has no legs. I knew from day one he wasn't going to be a good goalie, but we continued to work with him because of his passion and work ethic. So it is very easy to recognize of who's going to be an amazing goalie and who's not. Eggbeater is one of those indicators. Good reflexes, of course. So again, if you're looking for a kid who has potential to be a good goalie, look for someone who has the speed and who has those reflexes. Being aware of the ball as well. Fearless. A lot of people call us crazy, right? Because we're willing to take those shots and have bloody nose. almost every week. Yes, if someone is fearless and they just have no fear of that ball or getting or having bloody nose, that's your guy or girl. Able to lead, talk. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm going to use actually, everyone knows, most likely everyone knows, Chase from St. Mark's, right? Chase, I believe, is at least what I've seen, and again, I don't want to take away from some other amazing goalies in Texas, but what I've seen is by far the best goalie in Texas, at least in the last 3 years. So in saying that, most of you know Chase and how great he did, especially in the finals last year. Amazing work ethics, one of the smartest kids that I ever worked with. He delivered on every single expectation I had, and he delivered on every single ask that I had. So there was no such thing as I don't know or can you say that again. He literally, from the moment the words would come out of my mouth, he would deliver on it. And he did an amazing job. But imagine if he had that in him to be one of those loud ones. One of the goalies who's very vocal, who was leading his defense as well as his offense. If you add that to Chase, I'm guaranteed that he would be considered to be one of the top 3 goalies for the national team. And again, being more vocal is a huge advantage. Not everyone has it, and that's not necessarily would make them the best at what they do. I've seen goalies for Croatian national team, he doesn't say a word the whole game. But then you have a Spanish goalie and Hungarian goalie. That's what they do. They offset their lack of I don't want to say skills, but they do how they conduct themselves in the water. It really helps the entire team, and it just makes them fearless and very intimidating to the players. I'm going to move on. Anyone has any questions so far? No? All right. So I'm going to move on to some of the coaching mistakes. I think number one is swimming. A lot of swimming. If you assign some swimming to a goalie, it should be a lot of Eggbeater. Butterfly. And when I say butterfly, emphasis on legs. Overall, goalies do not need to have strong arms. They need to have quick arms. So that's another mistake that a lot of coaches do is during dry workout, they will have them do biceps, for example. And strong biceps for a goalie means that shorter distance, they will have disadvantage and it will slow them down. So another mistake that I already touched on was not paying attention to the goalies. Like I said, goalies by nature are going to cheat and they're going to be lazy. And if we don't pay attention to them, if we don't watch them, they will take all the possible shortcuts. Another mistake, not being able to take to reach out to other coaches as well. So more coaches that the goalies work with, there's no such thing as a disadvantage. Even if he or she is just coaching players, has no goal experience, there's so many things that we can learn from coaches. I'll give you an example. I was talking to Mihai the other day, and I asked him, what do you think, what is one of the things that really impacted you as a coach when it comes to goalies? And he said, well, I went and talked to the goalies. And some of the goalies that I talked to, they told me, hey, what do you do different than what you did, I don't know, 10 years ago? It's like, well, I started writing things down. So that was he was in Dubrovnik, and he talked to one of the Croatian goalies, and he said, I'm writing down what everybody's shooting. It's an eye opener, right? So just talking to other coaches, and they have some things that they've learned along the way that can help us as well. again, we talked about dry workout. So again, no biceps, no lifting, lifting their own weight, working on triceps, core, and the legs is the only thing the goalies should be working on.
Just Alex. Like you're talking about, working on legs. I'm just curious, as a field player that tries to coach goalies, is it more for technique or more leg work that you kind of focus on for a new goalie and such?
Are you speaking about dry workout or about in the water?
In the water, just in the water in
So
general.
for new goalies, the most important thing for the new goalie, I'm talking about someone who's probably between 9 and 12, right? It's to balance their body. When I say balance the body, is to understand the weight of the legs and the arms in the water, right? So how they tread the water and how deep their arms are is the most important thing for the little ones. In saying that, there are certain things that I'm going to touch on that later on with some of the easy fixes when it comes to goalies. But to answer your question, balancing legs and arms is the most challenging thing for the new goalie. I think we talked about it yesterday or a couple of days ago about the little girl from California, and she was when she was moving her arms are moving in the same direction. And again, it's an easy fix. You just drop her legs. What that means is that let's just work arms, and she simply understood the physics and math of how much more power she was gaining by treading water with the arms in opposite direction.
Thank you. Now we also got another question in the chat. How many times a week for goalie Drylands? Is that like before every practice? Is it only a couple times a week? And then kind of how long for each Dryland session?
If we're talking about right now doing these.
No, I mean this is probably more just in general, like during the summer season and such like that.
Okay, so one thing I learned that the goalies are best when they're rested. What that means is that if you have a tournament coming up in, let's say, a major tournament coming up in 3 months, the first month it's all going to be emphasis on long, very similar to how you treat players, right? So you're going to do a lot of butterfly. You're going to do a lot of weights in the water. You're going to do a lot of arms up to get those legs stronger. As far as dry workout, as often as possible, 3 to 5 times a week. However, less and less as you're getting closer to the biggest tournament. Again, being rested, that's what brings speed to goalies, right? So same thing when you work with your players, right? Monday is a lot of swimming, Tuesday a little bit less, and then after Wednesday, none. Just scrimmage, passing, and just make sure they're well rested for the game. Huge emphasis on goalies because of the reflexes, right? So if the arms are heavy, they're going to move slow. If the legs are heavy, they're going to drop deep.
Okay, perfect. Just think that definitely answers the question. And thank you, Chris Cullen, for the question in the chat. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat. Just feature coaches.
So saying, in saying, it was a good intro to what I was about to say next. For most goalies, the first 30 minutes should look the same every day, almost the same. So very good warm up, huge emphasis on legs, and then at least 15 minutes of balancing the bodies in the water. When I say balancing, I'm talking about simple posture, right? Then transitions from arms down to arms up, and then how they balance the legs. In other words, if they're tilting forward or backwards, you as a coach should be able to determine of what they need to do to adjust that posture. Same thing with the head, right? So tilting the head down, making sure the forehead is protecting the head, the face, and then understanding of how the ball moves, and then practicing that in the water for the first 15 minutes, transition from passing to 1 to 3 or 2 to 4 with man down, arms up, and then sliding from one post to another. Obviously, all of that is recommended for the first 30 minutes. little bit of passing. It's a must. When I say passing, I'm talking about starting there from 2 meters, going all the way to as far as you can, right? And which will take you to later on talking about importance of accurate passes. Moving during man down or man up or man down position. That's also every practice, first 30 minutes. There's specific drills which I'm unable to show you on the camera, but I'm more than welcome to explain you one-on-one later on. I think if you want to leave my cell phone on it, I don't want to announce it to the whole world, but in the chat you could probably add that. And then obviously incorporating some jumps, at least 50 to 100 jumps, long ones, and then short and quick ones. That's something that I highly recommend. And then towards the end, warming up and shooting. And when it comes to warm up, I like for goalies to warm up each other instead of players. And the reason why I'm saying that is I like those warm ups to start from 2 meters and then go back and forth. So the goalies having a better understanding of this. So they have a better feel for the ball rather than 10 shooters warming them up. The next thing would be passing the ball, and why it's that important, right? So I've won games by making accurate passes. So in saying that, if you have a goalie who can pass and with confidence and with accuracy, and if you have a player that is just an amazing swimmer and can outswim his defender, you are in a huge advantage when it comes to offense. In other words, if I'm confident, if I have confidence in my goalie, he'll or she'll make a pass from our 2 meters to the other side on 6 to 4 meters, and if they can make the accurate pass on player's arm, then obviously in that case the goalie is part of the offense as well. And I think that is it's very hard for the young ones to do it, but I encourage you as coaches to allow them to make those mistakes and to encourage them to become confident and make those passes. Man up or man down. I don't think that if you ask your own goalie, do you understand what your responsibility is in man up and man down? And if you ask a player, and if those answers are not the same, then there's an opportunity for all of us to do a better job at it. What I mean by that is if you assign me a portion of the cage to protect as a goalie with man down, I'm going to do a better job than telling me the entire cage is mine. Man down, there's arms up, right? So if you assign those responsibilities to the players and a goalie, then you will have a better chance of protecting the cage. I'm speaking from my own experience again. If the goalie has a responsibility, but he or she is able to make a save and cover their players' angles, it will still great. If they don't make their save, no big deal. So again, I would encourage you all to speak to your goalies and to your players when it comes to man down, and do they really understand the responsibilities. You cannot expect the goalie to be responsible for the entire cage, but I will definitely put an emphasis on holding the goalie accountable for his or her section of the cage. Some of the best things that and this is going back to how some of the coaches influenced my career, is because they had faith in me when I didn't have. I'll give you an example. So I was 12 and I played for kids who were 14 and 15, and I mean that's a huge difference in shots and speed and size and overall. 12-year-old does not have that in him or in her to stop those shots. However, those coaches have made an investment in my career, and that's, I think, has made one of the greatest influences on my career. So in saying that, my suggestion and the only way for your goalie to become much better than what they currently are is to get them exposed to some really good shooters. So suggestion, if you have a 12-year-old goalie, make sure that they get exposed to 14-year-old shots. Same goes for if you are 14, you can go all the way up to 18. And then obviously if you're 16, I don't think you should be shy of getting exposed to even masters shooters. In saying that, especially for those in Texas, if you I guarantee you that if you get your 16-year-old goalie exposed to some master shooters in Texas, you will see a huge improvement in the skills.
A couple of questions, Alex.
Yes.
Yeah. So a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is, I'm a new water polo coach. So would you convert a stronger butterfly swimmer over a breaststroke swimmer? Yeah, to make a goalie, or is it? So that's the question. Is it? Who would you prefer to convert, a butterflyer or a breaststroker?
Smarter and faster with better Eggbeater.
And I do think that a lot of times, whenever you like the goalies do swim butterfly, they're swimming butterfly with a breaststroke kick, correct?
Absolutely, that's the only way to do it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just perfect. And then another question was,
for the little ones, just to say, for the little ones, I encourage double breaststroke kick because they just don't have enough power to pull those arms out of the water. So double breaststroke kick is suggested for the little ones.
Okay, so a lot of breaststroke kick.
Correct.
So then another question was, how do we arrive at these numbers, like in the repetitions of jumps and movements, et cetera? I have athletes that only want to check the box off that they did it. Can we get the same results with less reps?
If it's an expectation, right? And again, when I say 30-minute repetition of every practice, I believe 80% of it should be the same. So the same whatever warm up you're doing day one should be the same thing day 5, right? So what I've done in the past was 4 times. I'm not going to get into those details. Anyways, your question was about how do we hold them accountable and how do we?
I mean, it's just like, I guess the question is more about how to motivate. And then if we have less time in the pool or we have less reps, how can we get the similar results? So I guess, higher quality and less quality, or in less quantity.
I assume this has to do with not being able to replicate, us and have more than one coach at the pool at a time, right? And then how do we get that? How do we motivate goalies to do something even if we don't pay attention to them, right? And that's going to go back to making sure that you do spend some time with them. Make sure you do watch them. If you're not watching them, perception is reality, right? So make them believe that they're being watched. Once in a while, surprise them by counting things they do or raising voice kind of helps.
Yeah, go.
I understand the struggle. I understand it. Even I think with Pegasus one time I had 9 goalies, and it's impossible to work with 9 goalies. The max that one coach should work with is probably 4, but ideal number is 2. So I understand that. It's a very unique position, and one-on-one coaching really works well. It's difficult to keep them motivated, especially if we don't pay much attention to them. And again, make them aware that they're being watched. I don't think anything else will help. And again, I'm saying from my experience, if my coach was not watching, I was not doing it. Right?
Okay. Well, thank you. Sorry. I just wanted to address the questions that were in the chat. So,
Yeah, thank you. Bloody nose. It's very common for goalies to years down the road they still have their fear of the ball, right? And I'm gonna speak just about my experience of how I broke out of that fear. It was by force, and maybe not a lot of coaches will like that, but I think that was the only way for me to snap out of that. And so what happened is, and something that I've used with St. Mark's goalies and as well as Pegasus goalies, their nose will have to bleed. There's no other way for a kid to understand that forehead is there to protect their nose until the nose starts bleeding. In saying that, warming up goalies, so whenever it's time for them to warm each other up, I would put them in 2 meters from each other and just ask them to shoot as hard as they can in their heads. And guess what? Once in a while, the ball is going to go through, and once in a while, those noses will be bloody, but that's the only way.
yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, I saw the question. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so there's a couple questions in the chat. So at many youth tournaments here, there are very little time between games. How would you structure a 10 or 15-minute warm-up for goalies pregame? If they can't get in the pool, if it's Dryland, if it's between quarters, or just a quick little warm-up. So.
Dry warm-up is extremely important, right? So injuries are common for goalies, especially in the groin area, if they don't warm up well. As far as shoulders, and I don't think goalies experience much of it except for the elbows, right? So very important for those legs to be warmed up and to stay warm. And as far as getting the quick warm up, if your legs are ready, once you jump in, very little swimming. And when I say very little swimming, you just get the feel for the water and right away start working on your posture and getting at least 20, 30 jumps before you even touch the ball.
Okay. And then another question was, do you use video? And if so, how often? Is it a video of practice or games?
I do not.
No video. Okay. There you go. And was it? Do you have any more that you want to share with everybody?
Well, three more things. Goalie size, right? And does it really matter? I don't think it doesn't. You just need to adjust your goalie to expose it to different techniques. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm 6'8". I'm pretty sure with my reach, I can catch any ball if I'm sitting on the right side of the cage, if I'm positioned well. So I never relied on my arms. So one of the coaches recognized that, and it was with the Serbia Montenegro national team, and he said, "I want you to hold one of your arms up." And I said, "How am I going to tread water?" He said, "Well, you don't have to tread at all, but I need one of your arms up for the next 20 minutes." And I pulled up one of my arms, and next thing you know, I made exactly the same number of saves, even with my arm up. So what he was trying to show me is that I don't need to really work hard on my arms, that I already have a stretch. And it was an eye-opener to me, something that I also try to work with my goalies to understand that if you're relying too much on your arms and try to get your shoulders up, it means your arms will go deep. So, and again, going back to the mat, and the distance between your hands and the ball increases the more you rely on your arms. In other words, if you're in a goalie position and your arms go deep, that's a longer distance to cover. And again, smart kid would understand that real quick. And going back to goalies that do not have that kind of reach, legs are beyond important. So those goalies cannot have weak legs. What's going to happen is that the arms are going to go deep. Once the arms go deep, they can't catch those corners, and it's very difficult to even work with goalies like that to get them to snap out of that routine of keeping those arms deep.
So what about just a goalie that's just like either just a smaller male goalie or a female goalie that might be like 5'3", 5'4"? Obviously, that is much different than a 6'4" or a 6'8" goalie. So, any thoughts on like, okay, this goalie comes to us and they want to be a goalie, and they have that mindset, they have the smarts, they have the toughness, they have the passion, but they're just kind of short in stature. How would
They
you
can
kind
still
of?
be amazing. They can still be amazing. Legs are everything in that situation. An example is that for someone who's 6'9", I don't want to show them my shoulders. I don't want to show them my arms. I don't want that player to see anything. I don't want them to see how big I am. I don't want to show them that I can catch that corner, right? So I'm going to sit low, and I'm just going to wait for the ball. However, if I'm 5'5", right, I need to be able to block most of the cage with my body. In saying that, in having strong legs and sitting high is beyond important. And again, in their situation, a lot of goalies, what they do, they tend to fall forward, especially when players are faking, right? So they tend to rely more on their arms as they're getting tired. That's one of the things that it's coaches' obviously job to pay attention to that and correct it if possible.
Now we have a couple questions from the chat. So,
Yes.
How do you develop the understanding of reading angles, and how do these techniques differ with the size of goalies?
Piece of paper, and then a lot of times I will use myself as an example. There's a cage sitting outside the pool, right? And I will sit inside the cage and I'll say, hey, how much you see? I'm going to stretch my arms, and I'm at 180 angle, and I'm going to say, how much of it do you think you see right now? And you will see, 1.5 feet, 2 feet on each side, right? And then I would move 2 feet forward, and I say, how much you see now? I said, oh, there's about a foot now. Okay, what if I move my arms to 45% angle, right, and move towards them? Is how much you can see now? I said, we don't see the post at all. So it's an eye opener to them, especially for the little ones, the importance of catching the ball early and jumping forward, and obviously having sitting in the cage in the correct angle and the correct distance from the goal line.
Another question from the chat was, do you have a favorite way to defend the lob shot? Is it opposite arm, kind of over, or something else?
Opposite over.
Okay, perfect. All right, perfect. All right, well, good. I didn't mean to stop you, and your momentum
only have
going. So,
two more things. One is boys versus girls, and I took a great advice from someone the other day, and he said, treat them equally. And it was an eye opener to me as well. It was actually Joe. I talked to him how I have not worked with too many girls, and I started working with some girls at Pegasus recently, and it was a struggle at first because I had to adjust the way I was treating them. And then for someone who's coming from Yugoslavian water polo school, where there was no negotiation, to say it. During water polo practice, I had to deal with a lot of negotiation with some of the girls, and but then again, it was an eye opener to start treating them the same as boys. They're respected.
Yeah, I mean, we had our talk yesterday, and we were just sharing about like the challenges of coaching goalies if you have a single coach and stuff like this, and then we got on the topic of the boys girls, and it's just been my experience out there that girls have been treated kind of differently outside the pool for all their lives, and I think they appreciate it if they do get kind of treated similar kind of the boys. So if you're a coach and you sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya, you do that with the girls. If you're a coach and you are a little bit of a yeller, you got to do that with the girls too, because they will pick up on it if you're trying to kind of treat them differently. And there are going to be some girls that will take advantage of that too. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. And the last thing is some quick fixes, easy fixes, something that you can do instantly once we get back in the pool and kind of test to see if it's working. It's improving Eggbeater, putting emphasis on those knees sitting as high and as wide as possible, and understanding, again, being able to explain those angles to the goalies, to understand the positions and importance of forward jump. In other words, catching the ball early. Transition from the base position to arms up, or one of the things that I started doing last year is I ask goalies to simply float with their arms down, and then just drop their legs and just use their arms, and then go back to using both and then dropping the arms using the legs. In other words, I notice how we help them balance the arms and legs, especially for the young ones who are sitting too much on their arms, where they're dropping too deep in the water, or not relying too much on their legs and not using their arms, just floating, throwing arms like this. So adding arms, removing legs, removing arms, and adding legs, and balance between those two really makes a difference. I would ask them to start becoming leaders, to lead offense and defense. When I say leading offense and defense, is to speak more, to communicate to their offense as well, as much as they're doing in the defense. And I think an easy way to get them to break out of that silence is to delegate them to be responsible for the shot clock. In other words, if you have a goalie who is super quiet and you assign him a task to call out 10 seconds every time there's 10 seconds on the clock, they will slowly be they will start feeling more comfortable speaking to that offense as well as the defense. That's just a suggestion from me, and that'll be all. If you guys have any more questions,
we have a question in the chat. What are some things that you do to help the goalies understand ankle flexion, to maximize their Eggbeater breaststroke kick?
I always use a pencil as an example, and for them to understand the importance of having their, as you said, ankles and their feet positioned right, and then treading water with their knees and inner thigh, right? So what I usually do, I would grab a pencil and I would drop it, and it would obviously sink immediately if you drop it this way. If you use a pencil and drop it that way, it would not sink at all, right? So for the little ones, they kind of understand math that's too much math for them, but I think they would associate the pencil with their feet and understand that if you're doing a freestyle foot and tread water, just the way that you've been doing freestyle, and you start moving your feet where your toes will be facing up, they will be able to understand better the importance of correct ankles and pointing the ankles in the right way.
Yeah, perfect. Are there any other questions out there? Please feel free to unmute yourself, ask away.
If Alex, can I ask you a question, please? What do you think about training with weight belts for goalies? What is your thought about it? Is it improving? Is it good? Is it bad? What do you think?
So it's risky. It's risky because of the injuries, but I don't want to say it's the best thing that happened to me in my life, right, in my career, right? I hated belts. I hated weights. However, it is very useful to a lot of goalies out there, especially those who are sitting too high and there's no need for it. In other words, I don't know, Mihai, maybe you remember how I did with James. James was sitting extremely high. James has a reach of probably 6'8", 6'9". There was no need for him to even show his shoulders out of the water. And then once we put belts on him, it dropped him immediately for maybe 3 or 4 inches. And then he was literally making more saves than before. So it was an eye opener for him of how much better he would do if he was sitting low, just wait for the ball instead of sitting high with his arms too deep. And then obviously, if you're gonna, I suggest weights, but only for the first, let's say, few weeks, just to get their legs stronger, but definitely not the first or second week after they get back in the water. It can damage the knees.
I have a question real quick. Like, you have a goalie and it's going to be their first day of being goalie, right? Can you take me through the first day, kind of what you would do with them and kind of teach them in maybe the first week just like the progression that first week to get them just be able to be comfortable in front of a goal and such.
Well, I would definitely have. There's a lot of talking involved, right? So when you have a little goalie and he or she was looking at you, it's like you're about to have people shoot at me every practice. In my head, like what's in it for me? So I would motivate them by definitely for them understanding of how important their position is, and then what's the reward of them being an amazing goalie. I would definitely focus on that first to get the buy-in. And once you get little kids buy-in, then he or she will definitely to listen to what you're saying. The biggest emphasis on the little ones is obviously going to be Eggbeater, right?
Yep.
So everything else is just a continuation of their successful Eggbeater. So whatever you do, it's definitely you can't expect them to hold their arms up for 10 minutes. So board laying down and having them push that board for a while, or even better, a ball. Because if you have, it's water polo after all. So have them little ball, have them feel it, push that ball for a little bit, and try to work on that Eggbeater. Get them out of the comfort zone. Whenever they get tired, obviously make sure they don't get too uncomfortable, but challenge them by having to do different tasks with the arms up, catching the ball, and so on. And one of the things that I really that are focused on when it comes to little ones is hooking up their legs on the steps and just using the arms so they kind of get the feel for the water.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, I mean, just talking about that, I've kind of seen some inexperienced goalies. They're in goal and they're just getting lots of shots, kind of during the shooting drills, and they try to get every single shot. As a goalie, and I try to tell them, because we're trying to maximize the number of shots for our field players, but as a goalie, I say slow down. You don't need to get every shot. Just make sure it's the quality over the quantity in that situation, because you don't want to flail and kind of throw your hands at it and kind of rush to get to the next shot and not be ready. So thoughts on that, as far as so do you want to just get as many shots as possible, or kind of slow down and just make sure they're quality shots?
Well, you're talking to a goalie, right? So a good goalie is going to hit that ball in the net. So it doesn't matter what you tell him. I can speak from my experience. I just don't want to see it in the cage, period. Sure. So it really, what it comes down to is you do want to work in a way that goalie is going to take it personally every time they see the ball in the cage, period. So there's no such thing as explaining goalie that to slow down, that it's okay to have that ball in the cage. So I don't have a better answer for you, or maybe that answer that you would want to hear. But as a former goalie, there's no such thing as that ball in the net.
Oh, hey, I get it. Hey, I think they need to have that passion and be competitive. I think you said that earlier, right? So
yeah, and the point of our job is to challenge the goalie. I'll give an example. If you have an amazing goalie and he's catching all the shots, well, challenge them. I'll give an example of what we did at St. Mark's. We lined up 15 players, maybe 15 balls, if we had 15 balls, and then I would sit behind the cage and I would just whistle, and they will all line up with the ball up, and then on my whistle they would shoot. So to get goalie comfortable, I would give him or her maybe 2 seconds between shots to adjust the body, right? And then later on I would shrink that to maybe a second, and then so on. In other words, you want to challenge the goalie to get in a position faster and better. And then even if they are doing a great job, still challenge them by doing impossible, right?
Okay. All right. Talking about something that's impossible is sometimes, convincing that goalie to be part of like a high school swim team, right? So I know, like, you've worked with the goalies at what's it called, at St. Mark's, and would you suggest, like you've been here in Texas now, the swim season is, from November to February, would you suggest a goalie that's part of the water polo team to also maybe swim as well, just as a form of cross training during the quote unquote off season?
I'm not gonna get into that because I played for a school that required water polo players to swim, and then I played for the other one that didn't. Right, so it really, if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. If it needs to be done, my suggestion would be to do breaststroke.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
a lot of times, goalie coaches would put goalies to swim butterfly. Well, not butterfly. Dolphin, right?
Okay.
Whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I'm all against that because they're not using the legs. What they do is they're pumping the arms and they're getting heavier and stronger. I would definitely put an emphasis on legs off season.
Okay. Perfect.
So, to answer your question, if it needs to happen, it'll happen, right? But if they need to do it, let's make the best out of it.
Okay, perfect. Is there any other thing that you would kind of recommend as far as like kind of different cross training kind of methods away from the pool? I mean, kind of besides just thoughts on that?
Just well, one of the things that I'm not a huge fan of getting goalies outside the water. They need to get the feel for the water.
Sure.
They need to be the most comfortable. Some of the things it's less physical but more mental challenge. One of them is being able to spread that vision, right? It's extremely important for goalies to be able to see what's going on. If someone has a ball on position 1, they should be able to see what's going on in position 4. So having those kind of drills at home, especially for the young ones, to challenge them in that way, I think it's very useful. By saying that, I'll give an example. One of my coaches made a suggestion to us, when I say us, to me and my brothers, to play at home. 2 of us were goalies and 1 was not. And it's like, hey, how many fingers do you see? How many fingers I'm showing? And it's in a blind spot, kind of say. And it really, I was young, but I was old enough to understand the importance of being able to widen my vision and see what's going on in the pool. Often you see, it's 2-on-1, right, or 2-on-0, right, and the goalie is completely focused on the left side, and there's an opening on the right, and that goalie has 0 chance to make it a save. I don't believe in 0 chances. I believe that every shot could be saved, and I believe there's no such thing as impossible save to make. And again, so this is one of the things that I did outside the pool to practice to widen my vision.
Okay, perfect. Are there any more questions for Alex? Again, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. This has been great. Any goalie kind of insight I think is great across Texas, and I think we can all become just kind of build up our knowledge of the sport as far as the goalies kind of aspect. It's just vitally important. Don't forget the goalies. They are over there. They are a vital part of your success. So I do appreciate it. This video is going to be downloaded at txwaterpolo.com. Starting next week, we are actually do the Texas Coach to Coaches. It's going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays, starting at 12:30 p.m. So we're going to have on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next 3 weeks. So, and next week's going to be Jeff Otten on Tuesday and Sabrina Carlisle on Thursday. So, Coach Alex, thank you so much. And I'll stick around if anybody has any questions. And everybody take care.